human beings and pattern recognition. So the human brain is essentially pattern recognition. You could even argue that the the soul is pattern recognition on the spiritual dimension. But let's take the physical for example. So the reason why we become wiser, hopefully, generally, as we become older is because we're better at pattern recognition. We're better at pattern recognition in relationships. We're better at pattern recognition at work. We're better at pattern recognition in life in general. That's why there's different ways to enhance your pattern recognition. You can take courses. You can study so that you can understand patterns in different domains. You can have work experience. You can have relationship experience. You can have life experience. You could have a mentor or a coach that could teach you higher levels of pattern thinking. So human beings are hardwired to recognize patterns. It was kind of like when we lived in prehistoric times, like in the caves or whatever, that we had to understand when we're on the hunt, whether it was a predator or a prey, whether it was something that could kill us, we had to keep our distance and have an escape route. Um, or whether it was something that was not harmful to us. So that's where the fight or flight mechanism comes in. That's one aspect of pattern recognition. Another is what they call approach avoidance, which is another name basically for fight or flight. Um, we size up a situation very quickly, intuitively. Whether it be a social relationship. Sometimes some of this is subconscious, what some people call intuition, that something just doesn't feel right. Something does feel right or something doesn't feel right because we have a lot more information subconsciously. That's why a person, like, if they're untrustworthy, you might kind of like, they might say something and it might just kind of rub you the wrong way, even though it might be an innocuous statement or just a look or something. Like if you know someone, you can tell when something is wrong. What's askance with this picture because it's either consciously or subconsciously giving us a message that's different than our general pattern. That's why they say that sometimes we don't actually see people. We see our what's called schemas or patterns for people. It's like if you think of a person, you tend to think of them as a stable thing. Like Bob. I'm just making up a name. Is kind. He's soft-hearted. He's generous. He's sometimes gets taken advantage of. He's a hard worker. Whatever the constellation of things that fit into a pattern, and we tend to repeat those patterns. That's why we sometimes don't recognize when situations or people have changed because we're not as much mindful sometimes because it's mental shortcuts. So what happens is if every situation, every moment we had to like reanalyze something, it would be like almost traumatic. So we tend to take these mental shortcuts. But the wisest people sometimes are the ones that are most living in the moment and most mindful because if you're just living in your thoughts and what you think is real, but you're oblivious to what's actually going on. Have you ever noticed like when you're very mindful that it's kind of like you just react better because it's like you see something and it's just very clear as opposed to what you think about it. So human beings are uh, human beings are based upon pattern recognition.